Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Agudath Israel Etz Ahayem Synagogue here in Montgomery, Alabama. I am Rabbi Scott Kramer. Welcome to our Shabbat Ma'ariv Kabbalat Shabbat service. I'm glad you decided to join me this morning, to join us, our community. We are praying out of Siddur Lev Shalem. Excuse me. And we will begin tonight on page 5 with Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim Kadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon, mi melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Barchuni l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon, mi melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We continue with Lechuna Ranana, Psalm 95, page 11. Lechune Ranana, Lechune Ranana, Lechune Ranana Ladunai, Lechune Ranana, Lechune Ranana, Lechune Ranana Ladunai. Naria, Naria, Latzor Yishenu, Nekad Mafana Betoda. Naria, Naria, Latzor Yishenu, Bizmirod Naria Lo. Lechune Ranena, Lechune Ranena, Lechune Ranena Ladunai. Lechune Ranena, Lechune Ranena, Lechune Ranena Ladunai. Naria, Naria, Letzur Yishenu, Ninkad Mafana Betoda. Naria, Naria, Letzur Yishenu, Bizmirot Naria Lo. Please join me in the English. Let us go and sing to Adonai. Let us trumpet praise to our protector. Filled with thanks, let us greet God, raising our voice in song. Great is Adonai, a greater sovereign than all other deities. God's hands form the earth's deep. Mountain crests too are God's work. The sea is God's, for God made it. Dry land was fashioned by God's hands. Come then, let us bow and kneel. Let us bend our knees in the presence of Adonai who formed us. For Adonai is our God, and we are God's flock, sheep in God's caring hands. If only you would listen today to God's voice and not become hard-hearted like the people at Merivah, like the time at Massah in the desert, when your ancestors tried me and tested me, though they had seen what I had wrought. For 40 years I was troubled by that generation, and I said, these are a people whose hearts have gone astray. They do not know my ways, so in anger I swore they would not enter my rest. Arba'im shana kut bedor va'omar to'eh levavem vehem lo yadid rachai asher nishpati v'api im yavaon el menuchati. Page 13, Psalm 96. Shiru ladonai shir chadash, shiru ladonai kol haaretz, shiru ladonai baruch shemo Basru meyom leyom Yeshuato, Sapru vagoyim kevodo, Bechol amim nifliotov, Ki gadol Adonai, O mehulal miyod, no ra'u, Al ko Elohim lai lai lai, Ki ko Elohe ha'amim elilim, V'Adonai shamayim asa, Had v'hadar lefanav, Oz v'tiferet b'mikdasho, Havu l'Adonai mishpachot amim, Havu l'Adonai kavod vos, Havu l'Adonai kevod shemo, Seu mincha, Uvahu l'chatzrod of Laila, Shtachavu l'Adonai, Behadchat Kodesh, Chilu mipanav kol haaretz, Imrum vagoyim, Adonai malach, Hatikum tevel balatimot, Yadin amim b'meisharim, Yismechu hashamayim v'tagel haaretz, Ayir amaya amu melo, Yalo sadai, V'chol asher bo lai lai lai, Az yiranenu kol hatzayar, Lifnei Adonai kiva, Kiva lishpot haaretz, Yishpot tevel b'tzedek, V'yamim b'emunato, Yalai lai lai lai, Yalai lai lai lai, Yalai lai lai lai, Yalai lai lai lai, Yalai lai lai, Yai lai 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 lai, Yai lai lai lai. I always give a thumbs up when one of my children come in to join me. Page 15, Psalm 97. Adonai reigns, let the earth be glad, the many distant lands rejoice. Clouds and thick darkness surround the divine, righteousness and justice secure God's throne. Fire goes before God, consuming besiegers round about. Flashes of lightning illumine the land. The earth watches and trembles. Mountains melt like wax at the approach of Adonai, at the approach of the Master of all the earth. The heavens tell of God's righteousness, and all the nations see God's glory. Worshippers of idols be shamed for praising false gods. All that is decreed supreme bow before God. Zion hears of it and rejoices. The cities of Judah exult as you, Adonai, pass judgment. You, Adonai, are above all that is earthly, exalted over all that is worshipped as divine. Those who love Adonai hate evil. God protects the lives of the faithful, saving them from the hands of the sinful. Light is sown for the righteous and joy for the upright. Rejoice in Adonai, you righteous people, and thank God as you pronounce the divine holy name. Or zarula tzadik ul Yisrael ev simcha, simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, v'hoduhu alazecher kadesho. Page 17, Psalm 98. Amizmor shiru ladonai shir chadash, ki niflot asa, Hoshia lo yemino, Ozaro akod, Shoadia Adonai Yeshuato, Le'eno goyim gilad tzidkato, Zachar chasta ve'emunato, Leveit Yisrael, Ra'u cholav se'aretz, Et Yeshuat Eloheinu, Horiu l'Adonai kol haaretz, B'tchum ve'ranenu v'zameru, Zamru l'Adonai bechinor, Bechinor v'kol zimara, V'chatzot rod v'kol shofar, Horiu lifnei HaMelech Adonai, Yiramayam u'maloho, Tevel v'yoshveva, Neharot yimcha u'chaf, Yachad arim yiranenu, Lifnei Adonai kiva, lishbot haaretz, yishbot tevil b'tzedek, v'yamim b'meisharim, yalai, yalai, la 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 la, yalai, la 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 la, yalai, la 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 la, yalai, la 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 la, ya la 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 la, yalai, la 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 la, yalai, la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Page 19, Psalm 99. Adonai reigns, nations tremble. The one enthroned amidst the cherubim makes the world quake. Adonai is great in Zion above all nations. They shall acknowledge your name, saying, Great, awe-inspiring Holy One. A sovereign strength lies in the love of justice, and you forge the paths of truth, judging Jacob righteously and justly. Exalt Adonai, our God. Bow down before God, the Holy One. Moses and Aaron among God's priests, and Samuel among those who called upon the divine name, called to you, and you answered them. You spoke to them from amidst the cloud. They kept your covenant and the law you gave them. You answered them, Adonai, our God. You were a forgiving God to them, even as you punished them for their transgressions. Exalt Adonai, our God, and bow down at God's holy mountain, for Adonai, our God, is holy. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu lahar kadosho, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. We rise, if you are able, page 21, Psalm 29. Mizmor leDavid, havu ladonai b'nei Elim, havu ladonai kavod vos, havu ladonai kavod shemo, ishtachavu ladonai behadrat kodesh, kol Adonai al hamayim, el hakavod hirim Adonai al mayim rabim, kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai be'adar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, Vaishabech Adonai et alzei halvanon, Vayarkidem kemo egel, Lebanon v'Sirion kemo venrehemim, Kol Adonai chotzev lavotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yechol ayalot, vayechesab yaharod, uvehechalo kulo merkavod. Adonai lamabul yashav, yeshev Adonai melech leolam, Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. You may be seated. We continue on page 23 with Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmianu elam yuchad, Adonai echad, Ushemo echad, L'shemo tiferet v'litila, Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabela, Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki mikor abiracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sov maaseh b'machshat chila lecha, Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabela, mikdash melech ir melucha, kumitzi mitocha hafecha, ravlach shevet, בימי קבחה והוא יחמו עלייכם לה, Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה, התנערי מעפר קומי, לבשי בגדי תפארתך עמי, היד בן ישי בית הלחמי, קרב אל נפשי גאה לה, Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה, hitoreri, hitoreri, kiva ome ore kumi ori, ori uri, shir daberi, kivod Adonai, alayich nigla. Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lo tevoshi velo tikami ma tishtochachi uma temi bach yechesu ani yami venivnata ir al tila. Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. V'hayulam shisa shaho esayich v'rachakulko mivalayich yasis alayich Elohayich kim chas al kala. Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Yaminu smoti fotzi v'yet Adonai taritzi hayadish ben parti v'nismecha v'henagila. Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. We rise, we face towards the west, towards the entrance of our synagogue, as we welcome the Shabbat bride. Boi v'shalom materet pala gam besimcha uvetzala toch emunei am segula. Boi chala lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. You may be seated. We continue page 27 with Psalm 92. A psalm, the song of the day of Shabbat. It is good to thank you, Adonai, and sing to your name most high, to proclaim your love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night. Finger the lute, pluck the harp, let the sound of the lyre rise up. You gladden me with your deeds, Adonai, and I shall sing of your handiwork. How wonderful are your works, Adonai, how subtle your designs. The arrogant do not understand, the fool does not comprehend this. The wicked flourish like grass, and every evildoer blossoms, only to be destroyed forever. But you, Adonai, are exalted for all time. Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered. As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raised my head high, anointed it with fresh oil. As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady, for my ears listen and hear. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in our God's courtyards. In old age they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no flaw. Tzadik tamar yifrach ki erez balvanon yiske shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu Yafrichu od yenuvon beseva deshenim verananim yeyu lehagid ki yashar Adonai tzuri v'lo havlatabo. Page 29, Psalm 93. Adonai is sovereign, robed in splendor, girded in strength. The earth stands firm, not to be dislodged. From earliest time you are enthroned, you are eternal. The rivers rise up, Adonai. The rivers raise up their roar. The rivers raise up their waves above the roar of the vast sea and the majestic breakers of the ocean. Adonai stands supreme in the heavens. In your house, beautiful in its holiness, your testimonies endure, Adonai, for all time. Thank you all for joining me this evening. I never feel lonely. Even though there's nobody in the synagogue right now, I can feel all of your holy souls joining us, joining together, and it just warms my heart to see all these names on Facebook Live and YouTube and our website. I'm so glad you are here for this holy Shabbat. I hope everyone is well as can be expected in this very, I'll say, dangerous time. None of us know whether we're going to come down with this dreaded new variant called Omicron, but take heart for those that have reached out to protect themselves and others, that the hope is, even if we get it, the effects of it won't be as severe if we didn't have the protection. So thank God for that. In this week's Torah portion, Bo, we read about the last 3 plagues and the eventual release of the Israelite slaves from Pharaoh's clutches. And one of the exhortations from Moses to Pharaoh, he says in Exodus 10:9, Vayomer Moshe b'avarenu uvizkanenu nelech b'vanenu uvivnotenu b'tzonenu uvivkarenu nelech ki chag Adonai lanu. Moses replied, we will all go, young and old. We will go with our sons and daughters, our flocks and herds, for we must observe the Lord's festival. Vayomer alehem yichen Adonai machem ka'asher ashalach etchem v'et tapachem re'u ki ra'a neged penechem. Pharaoh replies, the Lord be with you, the same as I mean to let your children go with you. Clearly, you are bent on mischief. Lo chen lechuna hagvarim v'ivdu et Adonai ki ota tem mevakshim. No, you menfolk go and worship the Lord, since that is what you want. Rabbi Yisachar Frand from Near Israel, an Orthodox rabbinical school in Baltimore, near where I grew up, actually it's in Randallstown, comments on this verse. Rabbi Jacob ben Asher, also known as the Baal HaTurim, suggests that when Pharaoh says men, his intention is males between the ages of 20 and 50. These were the ages of the priests and Levites needed for the temple sacrifice. A little anachronistic commentary going on here. The definition of who was to perform sacrifices and when, from what age, was yet to be given once the Israelites were safe and sound in their 40-year wandering in the wilderness. Pharaoh refused to allow those under 20 or even over 50 to leave. Pharaoh understood something about the Jewish people. In order for there to be a Jewish people, there has to be a past and there has to be a future. Klal Yisrael must have a past. We are a religion with a concept of Masorah, a tradition that we get from our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and so forth. This concept is vital to what Judaism is all about. But we are also a religion that believes that unless we have someone to give over this heritage to, we have no future. We are all immigrants, whether from the Pale of Settlement in Poland or Russia, Germany, Izmir, the island of Rhodes, Morocco, or from Egypt. Some of us are second and third generation immigrants. Others have been in the United States for many generations. But we all came from somewhere else at a time in the past. Those immigrants to this country brought with them wealth or poverty, with knowledge of Judaism or just enough to get by. But they all came with the same hope. They wanted a new beginning for their families and wanted their children to be Americans with all that entails. Sometimes that meant giving up some things from the old country. There is a myth that at the bottom of the upper New York Bay is filled with talesim and tefillin and sidorim. Some changed their names when they boarded the ships that would take them to America to further distance themselves from the strict and unbending orthodoxy of their birth. What they did want was economic prosperity, even if it meant a relaxation of tradition. They were willing to give up Shabbat so that the first to arrive could sacrifice and make it easier for their children and grandchildren. To be fair, this was not an all or nothing proposition. There were those that clung to the Masorah or tradition. They did this in order to be able to teach their children about Judaism, about how to keep a kosher home and to put mezuzot up on their homes. And they taught their children to attend services not every day, but at least once a week and more for holidays. They taught them to support not only the local synagogue, but other Jewish institutions, to donate their hard-earned money to those that were less fortunate, and to be buried in a kosher cemetery. Even though these new immigrants observed a smaller version of what they used to, but they still clung on to their faith and taught their children about the tradition. In the mid-1800s, Hebrew schools popped up everywhere to teach this new generation Hebrew so their children could participate in services and have a bar mitzvah. This was an age that a bat mitzvah was unheard of. By the mid-20th century, we see the creation of religious schools, or religion schools. Not only were the parents no longer teaching Hebrew to their children, but they also abrogated teaching them about Judaism as well. Further and further away, we were moving from Judaism. Intermarriage is out of control, and studies show that the grandchildren of that intermarriage will probably not remain Jewish. The last Pew research on the numbers of Jews in this country is filled with diminishing numbers and Jewish youth moving farther away from the Judaism of their grandparents or great-grandparents. Truly, I am not trying to be negative. I am trying to take the words of our sages that tell us that Judaism can only survive when we have a past and a future. We need to instill in our children a care for Judaism and for the Jewish institutions and teach them about tzedakah or justice. And sometimes we teach without even thinking about it. These passages from the Torah that we are reading this week, of course, are central to the lessons that we teach at our Passover Seder every year. The Seder is about connecting with our past, finding meaning for our day and age, and passing that tradition to our children. Remember, the Seder is not just some dry reading of ancient texts. If you look at it that way, then the teaching will be lost to the next generation. It is meant to elicit a real connection with our ancestors, both in the Bible and with our own families. It is meant to bring understanding as to how we are keeping those traditions alive and relevant, and how to make sure our children do the same. If we encourage our children and grandchildren to practice Judaism by example, then and only then will we be assured of a Judaism for the future. We have to start with ourselves in the present. The past is the past, but the future is yet to be written. We have to set a good example for our children and grandchildren to follow. When the family visits over a weekend, bring them to shul or sit them down so you can watch a live stream service. Show them that you care about their Jewish future. When you visit them, encourage them to take you to the local shul that they like or belong, or find one to visit with them. Talk about Jewish values in a positive way. As adults with families, our children see things differently than when they were teens and under our house. Finding comfort in the support of a community is probably something they would find familiar from their younger days, and maybe want their children to obtain those same values. We must reach out to others to encourage their membership and their attendance, not only for services or religious school, but for social events and social and adult education. Only then will we be able to ensure our survival and make for a better world with Jewish values foremost. Shabbat Shalom. We continue our service with Ma'ariv, page 39b. We rise for the call to worship, the Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai hamivorach. Baruch Adonai hamvorach leolam avoed. You may be seated. Baruch et Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space. You completed your work of creation on the seventh day, calling this day from one evening to the next the Holy Shabbat, and gave this day of rest in all its holiness to your people Israel, creator of day and night, rolling light before darkness and darkness from light, making day pass and bringing on the evening, distinguishing day from night. Adonai Tzivaot is your name, living and ever-present God. May your rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch atah Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk. U'mahavir yom u'mevi laila, mavdil ben yom u'vein laila Adonai Tzivaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu lam voed baruch atah Adonai. Hamari v'aravim, page 40. Ahavat olam beit Yisrael amchavta Torah u'mitzvot chokim u'mishpatim otanu limadta al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shachveinu v'kumenu nasiach bechukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha v'olam va'ed ki hem chayenu v'orech yameinu uvahem nege yomam v'layla v'yavatacha tasim mimenu la'olamim baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ho'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinanatam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech u'v'shachpecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam liot al yadecha v'hayu l'totafot b'ninecha u'chtav dam nam zuzot beitecha u'visharecha v'haya ha'im shamahu tishma'u emetzvotah asher anochi Marcus Yosef did a combination. Vayomer Adonai Moshe lemor daber el bnei Yisrael v'yamarta lehem v'yasu lehem tzitzit al kanfei v'gdehem ledoratam v'natnu al tzitzit al kana patil techelet v'yalachem letzitzit oritem hoto u'zchartem et kol mitzvot Adonai v'asitem hotam V'lo tatu racharei levavchem v'yacharei nechem asher tem zonim achareihem leman dizgaru v'asitem net kol mitzvotai v'item kadoshim leloechem ani Adonai Eloechem asher hotzeiti etachem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Emet, page 43b. Ve'emunah b'shukah. Page 44. U'malchuto b'ratzum kibalehem Moshe u'vnei Yisrael neshira b'simcha rabba v'yamachu cholam mi chamahocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamahocha nedor ba'kodesh nahora tehilot O Seifele, Malchut Ra'u v'necha bo kiyam lifnei Moshe, Zeli anu v'yamaru, Adonai yimloch le'olam voed, v'nehemar kifada Adonai et Yaakov, ugolod miyot chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, Ka'al Yisrael, page 45. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom. Ushmotzeitenu vein l'chaim ushlomet avi alalam uvos alenu skat shlomecha baruch atah Adonai aboret sukat shalom alenu v'al kol amo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim, page 46. We rise. V'shameru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם לי ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. We rise for the silent Amidah, pages 47 through 52. Pray in Hebrew, pray in English, pray in the best language of all, the language of the heart. Think about what your past, how it informs your future. מודים אנחנו לך. עושה שלום במרמה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yas Shalom, Yas Shalom, Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. We remain standing as we open the ark. Turn to page 56. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol latet gedula liyotzeh bereshit shalo asanu kugoye haratzot v'lo samanu kamishmachot hadama shalo sam chelkenu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim l'fnei melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu Notei Shamayim v'Yosed Haaretz, U'Moshe v'Yikara b'Shamayim Imal, U'Shchinatu Zo, Begave Meromim, Hu Eloheinu Ein Od, Emet Malkeinu Evazulato, Kakatu b'Torato, V'yadata hayam v'hashivota elevavecha, Ki Adonai hu Elohim, B'shamayim mimal, V'yal ha'aretz mi tachat, Ein hod al kinik v'chodoneinu liv, B'tivecha duzecha. Gagadu b'toratecha Adonai imloch le'lam v'ho'ed v'nehemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol ha'aretz bayom mahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo Echad. Before I read the yahrzeit list, I wanted to share this reading that was written by a colleague, Rabbi Noam Marans, for the anniversary of January 6th. It's called We Mourn, We Praise. We mourn the trampling of our sacred citadel of liberty and the threat to democracy. We praise the wisdom and fortitude of those who withstood the assault and assured due order. We mourn the senseless loss of life and damage to revered property. We praise those who risked their lives so that we and our institutions might be restored to safety. We mourn the dangerous divisions in our country. We praise all efforts to bring us together as brothers and sisters, as Americans, as human beings created in the image of God. We mourn the failure of leadership. We praise the success of leadership. We mourn the loss of innocence that comes with the worst of our fears being realized. We praise the overdue alarm which has now been sounded and heard. We mourn the few who would subvert our most cherished values. We praise the many who will not let that happen. We mourn all resorts to violence. We praise the heroic restraint and nonviolent response. We mourn the marring of our nation. We praise America's durability, resilience, and promise. Dear God, spread over us your canopy of peace. Restore us with your good counsel, and save us for the sake of your name. Shield us, shelter us in the shadow of your wings. Amen. This week we will observe yahrzeits for Hyman Smith, Dr. Louis Leader, Eugene Miller, Ovadia J. Chaim, Goldie Lieberman, Max Barenhout, Ralph H. Heller, Mitchell Taffet, Nettie Finkelstein-Bayless, Ann R. Byrne, Dr. Alan Hess, Eli H. Hannon, Clara Marsu, Mitzi Mayer. And this remembrance came from Steve Landy for his step-grandfather, M. Hyman Schwartz. And he wrote, when I was 8 years old, he flew on Pan Am from Caracas, Venezuela, to Miami Beach, Florida. My grandmother, Sadie Schwartz, sent Hyman to Food Fair to get some items. I wanted to go with him to see what I could get. Well, I liked Kool-Aid. I explained how good it was, and Grandma would always get it for me. His look was amazing, and of course I got it. I loved him. Steve Landy on the great aunt Bertha Margulis. I remember how she came to my bar mitzvah in Birmingham. She was so proud of me, as I was her favorite. She never got married, so my brother and I are the only kids in her life. She told me it was the best bar mitzvah she has ever been to. I would take the Greyhound bus from Birmingham to Clanton, Alabama in the summer to visit. Those observing yahrzeit and those who mourn, please rise. Page 58, and join me in the Kaddish Tome, the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, b'yoma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayedach Beit Yisrael, ba'agalav izman kariv imaru amen, yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei maya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitchomam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudisha b'richu leilam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiran b'yoma v'yimaru amen yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen oseh shalom b'imramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael Ve'imaru. Amen. You may be seated. Thank you all for joining me this evening. Shabbat Shalom to everyone. I will be back tomorrow morning, 9:30, with a continuation of Shabbat services. Tomorrow evening at 7 p.m., the Alabama Community Virtual Havdalah will meet via Zoom. If you would like to attend and did not get the link, send an email to me, ravmalki@gmail.com. That's ravmalki@gmail.com. And I will try and get you that link before our service starts at 7 p.m. I'm just grateful for being here, being able to stand before you and have you attend these services. It means so much to me to have you all out there still connecting in this way that we've built over these last 17, 18 months, I have lost track of time. But I'm just so grateful for every day of life. I'm grateful for you, for Irene, for my family, for your family and you. And I hope to see you soon face to face. We'll conclude our service, page 211, with Adon Olam. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Li'et Nasa V'chefso Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Li'acharei Kichlot HaKol Leva Ado Yimloch Nora V'hu Haya V'hu Oveh V'hu Yiyeh B'tifara V'hu Yiyeh B'tifara V'hu Echad V'yein Sheni Hilam Shelo Leachbira B'li Reshit B'li Tachlit V'lo Ha'oz V'hamisra V'lo Ha'oz V'hamisra V'hu Eli V'chai Go'eli V'tzor Chevlim B'yetzara V'hu Nisi Umanosli Menat Kosi B'yom Mekra Menat Kosi B'yom Mekra B'yado Afkid Ruchi B'yet Ishan V'yahira V'yimaruchi Gaviyati Adonai Li V'lo Ira Adonai Li V'lo Ira. I wish you all a peaceful Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.